Chicago Bears get absolutely steamrolled in their second preseason game against the Buffalo Bills. So let's talk about it. What is going on, y'all? Fox Sports Talk back at it with another video talking, of course, NFL here to talk about the Bears. So if you're a Bears fan, hit that big red subscribe button down below. Make sure to follow me on all my social media platforms, guys, and hit the bell icon so you're notified every time I drop a new video. Got a lot to talk about in what I saw in that game, folks. Let's not wait any longer. Let's get into it. Let's start with the elephant in the room, which was the return of one Mitchell Trubisky back to Chicago, and this time with no Josh Allen playing in this preseason game. Mitchell Trubisky started, and Mitch had a very solid game. 20 for 28, 221 yards, and a touchdown. Yes, those numbers aren't eye-popping, but he only played one half, folks. And here's the thing, all right? Let me just talk about Mitch real quick and get it out of the way. No, I don't regret the Bears letting Mitchell Trubisky go. There's a reason that the Bills offered him a one-year deal worth approximately $2.5 million, folks. Any other team in the NFL could have had him, and they chose not to. And he had to take a backup role. So if Mitchell Trubisky, if all of those people that are out here trying to say, oh man, the Bears made a mistake letting Mitch go, well, he got a backup job for a reason. Now, for one night, or I should say one day, it was during the day, Mitch looked great against his former team, and I'm happy for him. I'm happy for Mitch. You know, there was talk about how Bears fans were going to boo Mitchell Trubisky and Tariq Cohen, and a couple of Bears players went to social media and said, you're lame if you boo Mitchell Trubisky. I agree with that. There's nothing that Mitch did again to Bears fans to make them hate him. The only thing with Mitchell Trubisky was it didn't work out here. But as far as a locker room guy, as far as a chemistry guy, he did everything right, put his head down, went to work. Obviously, he wasn't very good at what he did, but he didn't burn any bridges. So to me, I was always going to root for Mitch to succeed because he's a good guy and I want that for him. But as far as the Bears making a mistake, no, they didn't. Mitch just had a very solid game, and credit and testament to the Buffalo Bills coaching staff for putting Mitch in the right positions to succeed. A lot of the passes today were quick, one-read throws where Mitch doesn't have to think a lot. That's where he's at his best. And, you know, he proved to be solid. And Mitch is a solid QB in terms of when you tailor the offense around him. That was the entire issue here in Chicago, where it's not all Mitchell Trubisky's fault, but it's not all Matt Nagy's fault. It's like somewhere in between, right? Yes, Mitch was the number 2 overall pick. Should have played better, didn't work out. Could Matt Nagy have tailored the offense better around him? Yes. So, again, I don't want to just put all the blame on Mitch or the Bears. And that's what the national media does, right? That's why I tell you guys this all the time. The national media says it has to be one or the other. No, it doesn't. There's something called a gray area in the middle. That's where I've always been at with the Bears situation. It was a culmination of a bunch of things for why it didn't work out with Mitchell Trubisky here in Chicago. But hey, Mitch, for one day, you got to laugh in the Bears' face, and you deserve it because you played pretty well, and your team steamrolled the Chicago Bears, who looked awful. All right, so that was the thing with Mitchell Trubisky. Now let's switch it over to the Bears. All right, now for the Bears side of things. This was abysmal, folks. I'm talking on all fronts. All right, maybe not special teams. Special teams was decent. They were solid. They did their job. But offense and defense were both awful, folks. And I'm talking about awful. Let's start with the quarterback for the Bears, their new quarterback, Andy Dalton. And, folks, here's my thing. Andy Dalton was awful out there. It was a punt fest with Andy Dalton. All right, the numbers looked decent, but they really weren't when you watch the actual game. Andy Dalton is not a starting quarterback in this league anymore. There's a reason he was a backup quarterback last year. And the sooner the Bears realize that, sooner Matt Nagy realizes that, the better off he will be. I have told you his grand plan for job security this entire time was to start Andy so he can always say, oh, you can't fire me until you see Justin Fields. Well, here's the thing about that. You start Andy Dalton, Matt Nagy, and you're going to lose a lot of games really fast, and you are going to get fired really fast. So if you care about your job, Matt Nagy, you're going to want to start Justin Fields because Andy Dalton just ain't it. He just isn't, folks. There's nothing Andy Dalton does at an elite level, and behind an offensive line, which was absolutely porous today, Andy Dalton doesn't even have the mobility that Justin Fields does to make something out of nothing. So I'm done with Andy Dalton. I never started with Andy Dalton. I told you that ever since they made that signing, it was a big mistake. I said, listen, I literally told you guys this. I said the Bears would have been better off literally not spending that $10 million and just even having a quarterback room that consisted of Nick Foles and Justin Fields. And spend that $10 million on building up the offensive line. That's how much I believed it was a mistake to sign Andy Dalton. So to me, that was the big blemish on Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy in terms of their offseason, which was very solid. That was the one big mistake. And you know what? Here's the thing with Andy Dalton, folks. There's nothing I saw today that I didn't know before. It was just for everybody else to see. Andy Dalton isn't the answer. Justin Fields should start week 1. The only reason to not start Justin Fields is you are afraid he gets hurt behind a patchwork offensive line. And that's it. That's the only reason why. And talking about the offensive line, folks, I mean, listen, Justin Fields took a brutal hit. He had a free rusher going at him. I think it was helmet to helmet, man. It looked kind of dirty, but the offensive line had Justin Fields running for his life a lot of the game. And again, you're talking about a preseason game, but at the same time, we see that with Tevin Jenkins now being out, guys like Elijah Wilkinson, who were awful today. Like, we know this offensive line needs to get better and quit fast and in a hurry. I know guys are out, they're not healthy, but man, this O-line needs to get better. And maybe the Bears coaching staff needs to scheme plays to get the ball out quicker so the O-line doesn't have to protect and block for long, because today was awful. So as far as Andy Dalton, I've always told you guys he is not the red rifle to me. He's the beige water pistol. I don't want to start Andy Dalton. I think Matt Nagy will, because he's that damn stubborn. But you know what? If Matt Nagy wants to save his job, he should realize that Justin Fields will save his job. Andy Dalton will get him fired. You should know that. His offense was brutal again today. 6 points in the first half. I'm so done with the notion of any semblance of an offensive genius that is Matt Nagy. There's nothing offensively genius about him. He is average at best offensively. He's a good leader, good motivator, good locker room guy. But as far as offense, there's coaches in the NFL that will run circles around Matt Nagy. That's the thing. And you know what? You might talk about, he's got the Bears to the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years. Well, Bears got to the playoffs with Mitchell Trubisky, and he's out of here. He's not in Chicago any longer, so I don't want Matt Nagy to get all that credit, because the defense played a big part in his tenure here in Chicago when he made it to the playoffs. All right, so to me, offensively, quarterback situation, we know Andy Dalton's not the answer. Let's talk about Justin Fields really quickly here. 9 for 19, 80 yards. Obviously played the second half, so didn't really get a lot of playing time. I'd say you got a decent amount, but there was about 4 or 5 drops in there. I liked what I saw for Justin Fields. There was a couple of plays where, on a third down, he overthrew a guy. But, man, you saw the talent still. And the ability to escape the pocket, man, he reminds me so much of Russell Wilson, with the ability to run with a purpose, slides right away, never takes unnecessary hits except for the one with the free rusher there. To me, again, Justin Fields was fantastic. And look, as we get him a stable offensive line and he plays with the ones, imagine him with A-Rob and Mooney, man. Guys were dropping balls left and right. Like, imagine him with the starters. Yeah, that's going to be fun to watch. So Justin Fields, real deal. As far as a couple of the other guys that I thought played really well, Rodney Adams, I think he's securing himself a roster spot. Yeah, was a perfect game? No, but I like him better than Riley Ridley. I like him better than Juwan Williams. All right? Jalen Johnson had a solid game. Kyrus Tonga, our 7th-round draft pick this year. Travis Gibson, Thomas Graham. All these guys were solid. Everyone outside of that, garbage. Hot garbage. So to me, we learned a lot in this preseason game, folks. But the sooner Matt Nagy realizes that Andy Dalton isn't the answer, the quicker he will be able to save his job. Because Andy starting, and the excuse will be that, you don't want to put Justin behind the patchwork offensive line. Andy starting is going to lead to the Bears having a bad start. And they have a brutal schedule this year. It is brutal. So just wait on it. So let's see what happens. Let's see how stubborn Matt Nagy is. Should be interesting to watch. Maybe not fun. But leave a comment down below if you agree with me or disagree. As always, thanks for watching.